Yeah, so we are within Flutterflow. If you don't know what Flutterflow is, it's a visual development tool for building cross-platform Flutter applications. So again, really utilizing the visual builder, with some pre-made widgets and other things. But what we're looking at right now is just a splash page that we built in Flutterflow, and we'll jump through some of the other pages here on the left-hand side. So right now, the app is called Meal Planner. Essentially, it is a meal prep app. So a user could go through an onboarding sequence, select some of their allergens, their diet, and some other things. And then we will showcase the various meal options as if maybe this was a meal prep business, which has maybe weekly meals or monthly meals for their clients. So a user could go on, see what's available, click through and see details about some meals and other things too. So we'll briefly jump through, but yeah, so the user would start on a splash page, go through a simple kind of introduction through the application, and then would go through a brief onboarding. So here they'll select their diet, if they're a vegan or a vegetarian or other things. Then we jump into allergies. So they'd be able to tap and select the allergies that they might have. And then after that, they would select any ingredients they dislike, right? So if you didn't like let's say you didn't like ketchup on something, right? Then any of the meals with ketchup would automatically be kind of filtered out, as well as the diet options and things there. That way you don't even have to worry about those meals from a user experience perspective. Then after that, a user can either create an account or at the beginning, they also could have gone ahead and signed in if they already have one utilizing Fastgen auth, which we'll show the case in a little bit. From there, they'll be taken to a dashboard, and this is where all of the meals will be shown. So you'll see a meal image, the title of the meal, the type of diet that meal is categorized under, and you could click into that to see some additional meal details. So you'd be able to see a background image here of the meal, again, title, calories, some ingredients, and allergens. And then we have some basic profile information, right? If you were a meal prep business, you'd probably allow someone to change their eating preferences, maybe see a little about the company, like who the chefs are, or a bio about the company. So that's what we have here. And again, you could go back and change those diet preferences if you want. So that's a brief overview of the Flutterflow app. And again, you could build this in a matter of hours, days, depending on your skill level using Flutterflow and Fastgen together.
Nice. I do have a couple of questions before we jump to the Fastgen side. Let's start with some very basic questions for the ones who haven't used Flutterflow before. So let's assume I'm on the starting page, right? I'm on the meal planner start page. Oh no, actually we start on the splash, or where do we start?
When you load the app, first of all, you'd start up at the splash page.
Okay, great. Then how do I tell Flutterflow which page to go to next? Maybe we start very basic.
Yeah. So again, everything in Flutterflow is built up of Flutter widgets, right? So if I go to the widget tab, you can see all of the different widgets here. And so this entire page is built up of various widgets. So in this case, we have a button here, which is get started. We also have some rich text here for the sign in button. So Flutterflow allows you within its visual builder to essentially drag and drop elements in. So I've dragged a button in. I could move it around the page if I would prefer to. And then we have an action flow editor, which is very similar to the Fastgen node builder, right, for APIs, where basically I can hook up various nodes or actions in Flutterflow. So in this case, given we're creating a mobile app, we've added haptic touch when you click the Get Started button, and we've also added an action to navigate to a next page. So all I would have to do is click the plus here, add action, and you can see a multitude of various actions here, like, again, navigating to different pages or closing drawers, dialogues, or what we'll be using mostly today is going to be the API calls, right? Because we want to actually utilize an API call to connect with Fastgen.
Great. Okay, so we know what to do now to navigate to a different page. Let's go through the pages, and then let's start with the first thing that we need to do before we can even display any of the meals. Let's talk a little bit about the login and how that works with Flutterflow and Fastgen, because you've recently launched a new, like a custom auth block, I think, or that's like the feature in general, but it changed a little how that works. So maybe let's take a look at that, and then I'll show the Fastgen side as well. But I think most of it happens on the Flutterflow side, because you basically just need your auth URLs from auth endpoints from Fastgen to then do the sign up and login.
Yeah, so in Flutterflow, we just recently implemented custom authentication. So what that allows you to do is take advantage of platform-specific authentication actions like logging in, logging out, and then also setting up various page logic. So for example, if I was a first-time user to this mobile app, I probably wouldn't want the user to somehow gain access to the dashboard without having an account, right? So we can utilize various features in Flutterflow to actually prevent a user from accessing a page. So if I was on the dashboard page, for example, you can see I actually enforce authentication to access this page. So before, right, it was somewhat challenging to utilize a action or toggle like this when we didn't have custom authentication, but now Flutterflow has implemented that. So you just head over to settings, the authentication tab, and then you can select custom auth here. And what that allows us to do is, if I go to the sign-in page, for example, is I can go to that action flow editor and add the login action after we have an API call, which again, we need to just briefly add these fields. But we would do a sign-in, post call, in this case to Fastgen, right? And then we will actually store the access token, refresh token, and user ID. We can also set some user fields, which is nice too. So we can set things like a username, right? Or time created and things like that. So they could be used throughout the application.
Got it. So what I would do in Flutterflow is I add this specific auth block that we just talked about. And then how you would do it with Fastgen or with another auth provider, you just look at the documentation, see what they need. In Fastgen's case, if you use the email-based auth, you just send the email and send the password with a specific header. And then you get a return message for that as well, whether it worked or not. And then in Flutterflow, you can just use this information to authenticate the user and say, okay, now you are signed up or now you're logged in.
Yep. So you can see that here, right? We can just select, an email address to pass and a password. And then once the API call is successful, which we can name that output response in Flutterflow, then that allows us to take that output and utilize it to, again, store whatever is returned from the post request that we're doing to Fastgen in this case.
Got it. And we'll definitely test that later, but maybe we take one step back. So now what we have is we have the initial onboarding, right? We have the screen that we start with. We have a couple of selections that you can take, and the selections are not preset within Flutterflow, right? The selections are actually coming from Fastgen so that you can edit them in your database whenever you want. Nice. And then they are displayed in Flutterflow dynamically. So if you want to add a new diet or a new allergen, you can do that very easily on the backend. And the app will always change dynamically depending on what you put in there. And we'll show you really quickly afterwards how we set it up in Fastgen. It's pretty straightforward, but maybe show us, how do we actually display information that is coming from Fastgen in Flutterflow?
Yeah, that's a great question. And of course, once you master that, you'd be able to use this across essentially any functionality within your Flutterflow app of calling and displaying data from Fastgen. So within Flutterflow, we have an API calls tab, right? So this is going to look very familiar if you're used to using various APIs. So I will skip the Fastgen auth for now, but jump to the Fastgen data, for example. So within this, we have various calls, right? So let's say get diets, for example. So the get diets actually would pull from Fastgen all of the diet options that we want to showcase in the Flutterflow application. And again, this could be a mobile application, an app on a tablet, or desktop app as well, a PWA, or even hosted on a web app. And so what we can do within the API call, if I go to get diets, you could obviously, if you're setting up, this is best practice to use the kind of private API call, you'd have to log the user in and then use that access token in order to call the API. In this case, we're utilizing a public API. So we could response and test. And if I were to pull these diet options, you can see we get a list of data returned from Fastgen, right? So all of that's listed here. And then we have this option to actually add JSON paths. Now, in this case, we only have one. So we've actually added that here and named that JSON path diets. So now in Flutterflow, we can use just the variable name diets throughout the app versus having to type out that full JSON path. A very similar experience to Fastgen, right? You can kind of name core paths and obviously utilize those throughout your editor. I'm sure you'll jump into that too. So kind of a similar experience there, which is nice.
Got it. Maybe let's move over real quick and before we log in and continue building a little, and I'll just show a couple of the things of how we have set it up in Fastgen, and then we can go into the more complex stuff afterwards as well. Let me actually open up this, and then we can do this. So the basic idea is that we have, wait. There we go. That's the issue if you travel. Like usually I have my perfect setup, right? And now I'm sitting in front of my laptop with a mouse that I just literally stole from someone else in the office a couple of minutes ago. But I think you should be able to see Fastgen right now.
Nice. Yep.
Okay, so basically, very simply, for those who don't know Fastgen yet, you can build your APIs in here. We'll show that in a second. You can build workflows as well, time-based workflows or event-based workflows. We don't really need that for this one right now. One thing you could do with a time-based workflow is, for example, once a week, send an order summary of all the meals that came to you, maybe every Sunday, an email or something. But we don't have that yet. Maybe we can build it later. It should be pretty straightforward. And then we have the database. So we have a hosted Postgres database that you can use, or you can connect your own Postgres database if you prefer using, if you already have one, for example, or if you have a preferred database provider like Supabase, you could connect it to this as well. But for now, we just use the actual database for that we have within Fastgen. And we have a couple of different tables here. And then for the onboarding options, we did it in a very straightforward manner. We just put the options for the onboarding, the allergens and the diet and the ingredients, we all just put them in the same database table. So you have the allergens here. You can be allergic, at least according to our app right now, to dairy, eggs, nuts, soy, and gluten. If we want to add any other additional ones, we can always do that. Then diet options, you can eat anything. You can be vegan, you can be vegetarian, you can be gluten-free. Even if you're not allergic, there's people who prefer that. And then there's ingredient options. And we just added some random things of things that you might dislike. I think this is something where we have to talk to the users and see what are the things that they dislike. I think liver and mushrooms, you usually hear them a lot being as options that you don't use. And those are just some empty things in here because we are testing a little. But basically those are the important ones. We can always add new things if we want by just adding them in here. But for now, let's take a look at the API that gets us the information. This one's very straightforward. You can build fairly complex logic in Fastgen if you want, but for this one, it's very straightforward. You just have a GET request. We showed that earlier. We set the authentication to public just for easier purposes right now because we want to demo it to you. That just makes it much easier. You can set validation if you want. And then what we do right here is we just take all the diet options from onboarding options. So this is just SQL. We look at the diet options, which is a column in our onboarding options table that I just showed you. And then we said the diet options are not null and not empty, so that we can remove all the empty strings and everything, the empty rows that we just showed you. And then what we do afterwards is we just return the result. So basically we just return what I just showed you. I can show you what that looks like in our debug mode. We can test it real quick. And then you see these are the options that were shown in Flutterflow earlier, right? The same options that were being returned that you can then assign to a path in Flutterflow. You can always test whether things work. And then if this test is the same as the Flutterflow test, then that usually means that you have deployed the right version of the endpoint as well. Because sometimes you forget to deploy it. You check in debug mode and it works, and then you see in Flutterflow, hey, why is there a difference? And then you just, oh, I still need to deploy. And obviously it never happened to us. That's just a very simple way of how you get information from the database into Flutterflow. And then you can like get more complex in that if you want, right? You can put specific notifications in there. But for now, let's just continue from where we are. And so now what we would get is maybe you can prepare the like demo in Flutterflow already so that we can just show what it would look like in Flutterflow if we actually onboard. And then we can show like what a user sign up looks like, that the data actually ends up. And then we still have to build like 1 or 2 additional features so that the actual meals will also show up. But maybe in the meantime, I can also talk a little bit about the user management while we're prepping and while we're waiting for the Flutterflow test environment to be set up. Because if you actually have an app, like you need to like wait a little until the actual test environment is ready. So we talked a little bit about user management earlier, right? And you see we have a couple of like test emails in here. We have Will wants so much food that he signed up twice for this one. And this is your user table within Fastgen. For now, we only use email and password logins. You can always add additional logins if you want. So for example, one of the things that we'll probably add to our app later is maybe what would you want in a MealPrep app? Maybe like a Facebook login, depending on what our audience is, right? If it's like people who use Facebook, like maybe some like older people who are on Facebook a lot, Google is often a thing that consumer apps might like. But yeah, for now we just stick with email and password. Maybe you want like even SMS-based login at some point. Nice. You can set specific user roles. This would be interesting once we onboard the restaurants and then the users and then want to separate between them. So you could create one user role for the restaurant and one user role for the consumer who is ordering stuff. But for now, I think that's all we need to do in here, because the only thing that you literally have to do, like to have someone sign up, is you just need to allow users sign up. Don't forget that, because otherwise it won't work. And then it will automatically be stored here. And then what we'll do now, if someone signs up in the app, we'll store their preferences in a specific database table that we set up. So we have a database here. I think we called it users, and there's a lot of like test data in there. But how you can think about it is we'll use the email that someone uses, and then we use it as a unique identifier to store their information. Here's like some like just test information, and we'll see soon that we have a new row here that will then also have the diet information stored in there. And then we will display the information in the Flutterflow app. And how that works is we have an endpoint here. I think this one's called post user data. And in that endpoint, what we get is we get the specific things that were put into the Flutterflow onboarding. They are sent to Fastgen. Then we use the database here. Let me just show you what that looks like. We post them into the Postgres table that we have so that it's actually stored in there, that we can always use. And you can even update it later, right? Let's say someone wants to change their preferences. Theoretically, you can always update it in that table. And then lastly, what we would want is then get that information into Flutterflow, which is what we'll do in the next step, hopefully. I think I'll stop sharing right now. Is the testing environment ready already? Can we show the first couple of steps?
Yeah, let me share my screen and we'll showcase that. Okay, so this is Flutterflow.
So you see what already works, and then we can see what we can add.
Nice. Okay, sounds good. So yeah, so we're loading up here. So this is a test mode hosted within Flutterflow. So essentially what you can do is go up and run a test mode. You can also do a run mode. So if you're familiar with Flutter, That's going to be your kind of standard test mode here. I might have to reload one more time because I just made a change. So let me do that really quick. Because I was just setting up the preferences API call. But yeah, so this runs for about 30 minutes, which is nice because it should give you enough time to kind of go through and test the app here. So we will wait for this to load.
Maybe in
Yeah.
the meantime, let's talk a little bit about best practices. So
Yeah.
testing is a crucial part, right, of building proper apps. And let's talk a little bit about how we test, like the Fastgen side. I want to hear how you test the Flutterflow side, because when I see you working in Flutterflow, you don't immediately always like wait for like the full test mode, right? What you usually do is you start with your own kind of tests within Flutterflow. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, for example, how would you start testing before you go into the full-blown test mode?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different things. And let me actually, I'm going to end this. I think I might have messed it up simply because I added an API call after starting the test mode. So we might have an issue there. So let me rerun that.
Okay.
Basically, within Flutterflow, the nice part about the visual builder portion is we try our best to handle some of that within Flutterflow. So for example, right, let's go to the diet section. Because we're using a visual builder, we can actually show the user, in this case, that you actually are generating a list of children, which are the diet options, right? So for example, from like a debugging perspective, if when we generate a list here, that allows us to show kind of a semi-transparent list that would be generated here, which that helps tremendously when jumping through your app because I can see, okay, clearly there's lists being generated here. So that's one thing to watch out for. We also have the API call testing within the Flutterflow builder. So as we previously did, right? If we just wanted to test our API calls, we could do that here and store the data and test whatever we need. I know Fastgen also has that, right? So you can test it in Fastgen, jump in here, test it without having to actually start a test mode and go through all of that information.
Yeah, and it's
right?
actually helpful to like test it in both sides sometimes because like every now and then it happens that you have something configured slightly differently within Flutterflow, right? And you want to make sure that sometimes it's just like the header or like something small, and then you might be unsure about, okay, why does this not work right now? It works in the one thing and then the other thing. So either sometimes you don't have the newest version deployed, that happens every now and then. And then sometimes you have like some header defined differently, or you pass something else. So these are all options of like potential issues that you might encounter.
Cool.
And
So we'll
maybe let's
check
talk a
on this.
little bit.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
like this just like let it load. And while we do that, so right now we have the onboarding, right? We have the preferences that someone chooses. We have the login. We'll prove to you that it. Oh, there we go. I can. Oh, are we already logged in?
Already logged in, so let me log out and create a new account here.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, we're on the splash screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
As we said, we could click get started or go to sign in. Let's do get started so we go through that flow of actually selecting
Yes.
everything. All right, so there we go. We have that quick little slideshow here. And then we jump into selecting the diet. So here we're polling, again, we're polling from Fastgen to generate these options. And the nice thing is too, if we needed to, like for example, I could make a quick change in the diet here and I could write a custom Dart expression to capitalize these options, right? If I wanted to. So that way I could adjust some of the data. But here I can click on the option here and I'll have to check on this. We might do some adjustments, but I can click on an option and now I can continue. So what we'll adjust this to make sure that when you click on this, it'll turn light green. But let's do with omnivorous and click continue. So here we have our allergies, right? And same thing, we can pull this from Fastgen. That's what we're doing here. And we're generating a list of those options. Again, pulling from the API calls that we have here. So I could select, let's do nuts as an example. So now it's
Oh,
turning
this one
yellow.
this one is already color coded. Yeah.
Nice. Perfect, right? So we can click on that and we'll click continue. And then let's do one more. Let's do Brussels sprouts, for example. We'll see. This one might not be color coded.
This one is not color coded currently.
Okay, cool. So we can showcase that. And then if I click continue, now we can actually create the account. So I can go in, type my name. Let's do will+2@flutterflow.io. Let's make a password. And ideally, if this works, we created the account. We sent the preference data to Fastgen. So ideally,
let's see.
Stop sharing, right? And then now we're logged in. We've been taken to the dashboard.
Let's see if I have received the data here. Yes. But at least the login works. Let's see. Yes, I do have the new user in here.
Okay.
And now what we now need to do is basically figure out how do we get the information that was just passed into the right place in the database, right? I think we just fixed or we just changed something in one of the calls a bit earlier. So now we just figure out which call are we making and how does it get into our database.
So what I actually did, what I realized I had done, we also have this ability to disable action. So I actually had this API called disabled originally. So I'm going to enable this.
Oh, okay. So that might actually be the issue with
that hopefully should fix it. Do we want to fix anything else before we start the test mode, or we want to
can you show me the previous API call? I was distracted for a second.
Yeah. Let's open it up here. This API call or the save user?
Yes, is it the sign up call? Are we going to user data X? No, the next one where we basically the one where we pass the preference data.
Yep. So this is the save user prefs, and this should be working. Hopefully the one we just need to work out is actually getting the meal data back.
Yes, we just switched that to a post so we can just put it as a body and then it should work.
Okay, nice. All right, so this should have refreshed here. It'll take a moment to load, and then we can sign out and do it again. But yeah, could have something to do with my Wi-Fi plus Livestream.
Yeah, sometimes just takes time. While we're waiting on this to load, let's brainstorm a little, right? We are now entrepreneurs. We are building a meal prep firm. So the first step is done, not quite, but like soon, where people can pick their preferences, log in, and then hopefully soon also get the meals shown, right? So what would be the next step afterwards?
Yeah, maybe we could have a user submit or like click a button that says, or I mean, we could do a favoriting list. That could be interesting. Like you favorite your favorite meals, right? And then we save that within the user document, right? Like a meal ID or something like that.
I like that. Let's try that. But yeah, for now, let's see that we can make this work. So we are logging out again. Yep. And now we are logging in. Okay.
Let's do vegan, dairy, and Brussels sprouts. Continue. Do this again. Okay, so hopefully it should work. Let's see on the Fastgen side, see if you got a new.
Okay, I'll take a quick look. There we go. Oh, I definitely got something. Yes, we did get something. We have like a slight issue with the diets. The other things came in perfectly. Because for the diet, I got all 4 options as being passed, not only the option that we chose.
Let me check here. Okay,
so I got diet options, omnivorous. I got diet options, basically one array with
everything. Okay.
Yeah, with everything.
Let's check this then. App state, user diet. And then on the diet page, what happens is we want to show the diet options item. And when we click on this container, we want to, I guess we don't necessarily want to get diet data, do we? Yeah, we don't need to do it on tab because we're already loading the diet options here via the API.
Yeah, that's probably it, right? We just got the data and then we pass the data again. But what we should do is, yeah,
get rid of
just
that.
pass the one saved state.
Perfect. So let me paste that. Cool. So it'll just set the value to diet options item. And that might be why the color was not working either, because the color just checks to see whether the diet selection equals to the diet options item. So this should work ideally. And then the same thing, the colors, and then same thing for ingredients, just to check briefly on that to make sure we don't have an API call or anything there. So, okay, if the list contains item, obviously we want to add it or show it, and then
the allergens and ingredients disliked look normal for me, at least. I got allergens dairy and I got ingredients disliked Brussels sprouts. So that was definitely correct on my end.
So should be ingredients item. Okay. So hopefully this should, yeah, that should work. Should be good to go there.
Always good to do some live debugging.
Exactly. Let me refresh here. Try this again. Let's do it. So this is going to reload. While that's reloading, yeah, so the way we would do saving a meal, right, would probably be what? A post request to a user table, right, to save their, we could save the meal ID, right, or the meal name, the meal title, one of the two.
Yeah, I would probably just use the meal name because then it's just easier to display.
Yeah, so we could do that, pretty easily within the dashboard. We could add like a little star or heart there, right? And then what we
yeah,
could do,
I can let me add, like, while we're waiting on this, did that already show something? Well, I'll just add a favorites column right here.
Perfect.
In the database live. Let's see. Just call it favorites. And I'll do this, then update it.
Out here, let's try this again. Started. Okay, so there we go. It worked, right? When I click on
Okay, great. That's good.
I can select dairy. Maybe select Brussels sprouts. We might have to check on why that's not turning red, but figure it out. Here we go.
Okay, so let me check. Perfect. And my fingers are crossed that we did it correctly this time. There we go. Okay, this should be it. We have omnivorous, we have dairy, we have Brussels sprouts, and will +4. So if those were the things you chose, then we seem to have done it correctly.
Nice. Perfect.
Let me check the users table and see if it's in there. Nice. Okay, so basically we have it stored in here now. And now what the next step would be is we want to see that it's actually displayed in this one, right? So what we would do is we call the meals API, the meals endpoint. Perfect. And let us build that next. This is now basically us building it live, more or less.
Yep. So we're going to change this to a post. Well, actually, we found this out earlier. Let me remove this query parameter and change it to a post request. Okay, so we're going to create a post request to get the meals. And we're going to pass a JSON body, which simply contains the email. Is that correct?
Yes. And I think, let me check I think the email should just called email, but let me double check that really quick. Yes, if we just post the email as in the body, then it should work.
Okay, so let's try this. All right, so it worked. We pulled all the meals for the user, right? We're just passing in their email, and
Yes.
you can see the
And these should only be because what we did at first was we put all the meals in, and then at some point we realized, wait, why we had the preferences, right? So we should just only show the meals that are actually fulfilling the preferences. And maybe I'll just switch over to my screen real quick, and then we continue in Flutterflow. And in the meantime, you can see whether it actually loaded into the app. But let me show you on my end what's actually going on. This. There we go. So basically, what we have been doing here is, as I mentioned earlier, we have a users table here, right? And then the users table has the preferences of the specific user. So in this case, omnivorous, no dairy, and no Brussels sprouts. And then what we have here in the database as well is a meals table, and the meals table contains all the different recipes that we have. Like we are a meal prep firm, so we don't have 100 because we need to be economic about it. So right now we have 10 different recipes that people can choose from. And then we filter that down a little, but to ensure that we actually make a good margin, where we do the similar things on a weekly basis, and then we might expand or detract every now and then. But basically these are the 10 meals that we have right now. There's some allergens in some of them. We don't have any favorites now yet because we haven't built that yet. We have some calorie data, and we have the ingredients here. And we have an image stored as well for the specific ingredient. And so what happened right now was what we did is we have an endpoint that is called, let me check what it was called. I think, it was just meals. So by the way, one of the cool things that you can do in Fastgen, basically wherever you are, is you can use the command bar, which is Command or Control K, and then you can just type in things that you want to find, and then you can go there pretty quickly. Very, very helpful once you have lots of endpoints. And so what happened here is we had this email passed, right? And so what we did was, in this one, the only thing that we did was we returned the diet, the allergy preferences, and the dislikes from the users table, where the email was the email that we passed, which was will+4 at flutterflow.io. And then what we did next is we stored those in a variable. So in variables. So we stored the diet, we stored the allergens, and we stored the ingredients dislike. We don't have to do that. We can theoretically just use the output, but sometimes it's just easier to store it in a variable, and then you can reuse it at different places afterwards. So we use the variable action, we store those things in variables, and then the next thing we do is we filter the meals table to only show meals that have the preferences that Will has. So we have the query here. This looks a bit more complex than it actually is. So let me translate that for you. And by the way, secret tip, one, you can use our own Copilot here to help you. So you can just use natural language, and then it writes queries for you. It's pretty good. If you want to have access to the table structure, for example, it's great. Sometimes I also just use GPT-4 on the side, because most of this is still based on GPT 3.5. So sometimes the GPT-4 thing is a bit more exact. But yeah, so basically how you can think about it is it writes you the query, you just tell you what it wants. And then what we do here is, from the meals table, we want everything from the meals table where the ingredients is not because we don't want the dislikes, right? And then quick SQL tip, if you use I like instead of like, then it isn't character sensitive. So it can be capitalized or uncapitalized. And that is something that you sometimes stumble upon. You're like, hey, why I chose fish? Why doesn't fish work? If you use I like, then it removes character sensitivity, which is just a small thing. And then the percentages are there just to say it doesn't matter whether there's a space before or a comma before. Basically anything that includes this dislike will be filtered out. And then we use an and. We also don't want the allergens. We also filter out things where the allergens, like we include things where the allergens are not there. And then we only include things where the diet is actually the diet that has been chosen, right? So that's our little logic tree in there. We could have also done it with an if function with our logic loop and just like use the variables before to like go into one direction or the other direction. But I think for now, it was just easier to put it into one block. And then what we do afterwards is we return the results of this database query, which is just action.showResults. You can always click in here, and then we pre-save the variables for you. We pre-save the actions for you, and then you can just pick whatever you need. And so what we have returned down here is just the ones that were filtered as the ones that we needed. So I think it was 2 or 3, if I'm not mistaken. Did we already see them in the app? Well,
The meals?
yes.
I'm waiting for test mode to reload, but
Okay,
I think
great.
it should be good to see them.
Okay, great. Then let's see. We don't have that much time left. Maybe we can see if there are any questions while waiting for test mode. We can also philosophize a little on building some additional features like the favorite or one other thing that that we would want to build next is a checkout, right? So maybe let's talk a little high level on how we would build a checkout. And I can just tell you how I would think about it, and then you can tell me whether you would do it the same way. So the first thing we would need to do is like have some kind of like checkout button that then sends you to some kind of screen. Do you have any like pre-built checkout screens in Flutterflow by any chance? Like any widgets or something like that?
Yeah, there are widgets. We also have page templates that you can just click on and explore a library of various checkout pages, which would be nice, right? You could just hook the data up.
Yes. Great. So, and what you can do there is then use Fastgen, and Fastgen has a Stripe integration. So if you want to handle the payment logic there, you can use Stripe to handle like all the payment logic. You could even like as a next step, right? We take this step by step. We're like newly founded company, right? So the first thing we want to do is have a kitchen that can actually deliver, right? But let's keep that out of the way. So then the next thing we want is a checkout because we want people to pay us so that we can actually send it to them. And then the next thing we want to build is probably a subscription or order history list. So we would have to create an orders table that we can like pull the orders from and then like display the orders for the actual users and say, well, this order has been ordered on I don't know, Friday last week. And then it shows you when the last order comes. And then you can just click reorder maybe, or you can like do a new order. And then you see like how much money is being. I think this would probably be one of the next things we would want to build, I assume.
Yeah. I think obviously that would make sense from a business perspective too for this app, because at the end of the day, we want to be making money. So yeah.
Yes, that's the goal.
I mean, from how you broke it down, it definitely makes sense. And the nice part is, again, it's just once you hook up the API calls and add those into Flutterflow, it's just the process of simply hooking those up to content. So you can see that
nice. Here we go.
Took the meal preferences. We're also storing different user data. So for example, on the profile, we're saying like, good afternoon, Will, right? It's pulling my name. In this case, we've also used, you notice omnivorous in the in the Fastgen table is lowercase, but in this case, we're capitalizing it. Now, I'm going to see if this works. I just tried to hook this up very quickly, so it might work or it might break. Actually clicking into this and seeing the details of the meal. So if I click into this, let's see what happens. Does it work? Okay, almost. This is not I set allergens to be a list, but what I've realized is it's not a list. It's just a string of allergens for the comment. So I will need to adjust that, but we pass the image.
Okay, so we see
pretty much. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I just wanted to list the things.
Yeah. So I mean, it looks pretty good. Again, we could adjust the calories because what we're doing is just appending calories here. So in Fastgen, it looks like we're doing the same, right? We're already adding cal to it. So I could just put the calories listed here. And all we're doing is passing the JSON object when we click on this. So this meal details, you can see we're just passing the JSON object of the meal and showing that in the meal details. So again, to my point, right, we could just adjust this and remove the list if we need. But yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, I think this is one of the most powerful things, especially for people who are a bit new in the mobile game. Because
sure.
we see like basically we see like three types of like Fastgen plus Flutterflow users. Number one, we just have like Flutterflow users who want to use like a different backend, so they use Fastgen, right? That's pretty straightforward. They already know everything in Flutterflow. They have to learn Fastgen. What we also see is people who just want to build apps, right? And then they are thinking about, okay, what's the best option for like my mobile app? And then they stumble upon like Flutterflow, but they are experienced mobile developers. So for them, some of the things we're saying is like not super new, right? And then we have people who come from like the web or might like be like less experienced, maybe they're designers or something. And I think for them, it's like, especially for those people that are like trying to get into Flutterflow, I think the cool thing is once you have the data stored in the database, and once like the structure of your data is clear, you can reuse that in so many different places, right? We just showed you like we had the meal overview, and then you click on it, and then you have this like nice overview page. And the cool thing is like once you have set it up, it's much easier to do all those small things. For example, if we now do the order history page, most of the things for that we have already done, right? So the idea is like the most important or most difficult thing is like to get the like basic setup done. So what I will do soon and what we'll do a bit more is also build like some more finished templates. So maybe this is a thing that we build out a little on our end, and then we do a Fastgen template as well. And then with like 2 or 3 clicks, you can just have the Flutterflow front end and the app is there, and you have a like Fastgen backend, you connect it, and then you have a, like a MealPrep app. But yeah, what I just want to say is once you have the data structure, you can just load it in so many ways, and Flutterflow makes it so easy for you to display it in different ways and to like change it very quickly. So if you want to reorder something, you don't have to think about it much. You literally just drag it up, which is really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, like we just made that quick change to the UI, right?
There we
Now
go.
we have the calories fixed and the allergens, right? That took a minute to just quickly change the variables up and go. And the process repeats over and over for the order history, right? It's the same exact thing. Just get the API call, return the data, and generate a list of the stored order history, right? So
Nice.
yeah, definitely
Maybe
excited.
So go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just saying, definitely excited to see some Fastgen Flutterflow templates as well.
Yeah, like I think this would be a prime candidate, and I have an idea for like an app that I want to build. Like I'm more of a web person, but Flutterflow makes it a bit easier for me to jump into the mobile side as well. Maybe as like the closer to this video, because we trust in ourselves, do we want to do like one more sign-in, like from start to finish, and just show what we've like built?
Yeah.
And then use that as the closing off point. Let me quickly see whether there's any questions, because it's always like if you're live on multiple different fronts, then sometimes you miss
No
things.
worries.
So let me quickly check. Oh yeah, I have one question here. Let's see. Oh, how does deploying the app on Flutterflow works? Is someone asked that?
Yeah, that's a great question. With Flutterflow, you can go to the settings page, and given Flutterflow allows you to create cross-platform applications, you could do 2 different things. You could either deploy to the Google Play Store or App Store just by, we utilize CodeMagic, which is a very popular platform to essentially bundle and deploy your mobile application. So you could use like Flutterflow as your CI/CD pipeline, utilizing the App Store or Google Play Store deployment. Or if you wanted to test on web as well, we offer a temp domain, and you could also add a custom domain. So we could technically deploy this to the App Store and publish it on web, and it'd be ready to use. We also have the Flutterflow CLI, which allows you to pull all of the code, the entire Flutter project to VS Code or another IDE, or you can even download the code yourself and manually package that up and deploy that too. We've seen all of those as options.
Okay, then let's show them the rundown one more time.
Yeah.
And maybe just from beginning to end, just like to show what it looks like and to set the stage for that. So basically, how it didn't take you long to build the front end, like the mobile side, right? Like less than a couple hours, I assume.
Yeah, just a few hours. Yeah, and obviously that was from scratch too, which is not coming off design, which is cool.
Yeah, same here on the Fastgen side. Like for the backend, it took us, I think, like 1.5, 2 hours. Biggest bottleneck was that we used like the old Flutterflow authentication for a bit, and because we had like someone who explained it to us, and that was before the new authentication thing launched. So like that was the thing we struggled with the most.
Today or yesterday, a new Flutterflow custom auth video. So if you're interested, watch that because that'll walk through the whole process. Yeah.
Okay, great. So setting the stage. MealPrep for Meal Planner is launching a new app. What are we doing?
Yeah. So here we're on the splash page, right? We want to welcome users. We give them the option to sign in if they already have an account, or we're going to go ahead and click Get Started and welcome that user to the app. We have local customized meal planning options. We're using a page view here to go through and really prep the user. And then now we're pulling data from Fastgen to get diet options. So maybe the user is vegan. They can click on vegan and we're saving that. Now they can select their allergies. Again, pulling from Fastgen. So let's do eggs. We'll click continue. And then now we can also get ingredient dislikes, again, pulling from Fastgen. So we'll select an option here. Didn't have time to make that green when clicked on, but we could easily change that in the future. And now we're prompted to create our account after we've gone through that onboarding, right? So I could be Tom Smith today, right? Let's do well, I don't know if I can make up an email here, but let's do it.
I think that should work.
And then, right, we'll type in a password and we'll click create account. And when I click create account, it's going to create an account in Fastgen, sync all of our preferences to Fastgen as well, save it there, and then take us to the dashboard. So we'll click create account. And there we go. We've loaded for my vegan diet preference that don't include any of the allergens or dislikes that I've also previously selected. So I could click into this, let's say the spicy chickpea Buddha bowl. Maybe we're interested in that. Looks pretty good. And if we click on that, we can actually go into a details page to see that with the name, calories, ingredients, allergens. And again, we could go back to the other page if we wanted to as well. And then we have a basic profile section too. So pulling in, good afternoon. It's 1 p.m. EST where I am. And then Tom Smith, which was the name. And we could continue to set this up with eating preferences and about us info and more there too.
Nice. Okay, so we built a very basic, but I think like pretty nice looking and functional app, right? So we could have a couple of next steps that we do. I'm getting very hungry now, and I assume Will, for you it's the same, especially if it's 1 p.m. where you are right now. Sure. So thanks so much for joining us, and I bet there will be like some more questions. Flutterflow has a pretty cool community where you can ask all their questions. Fastgen has a Slack community as well that you can join. And the nice thing is we hang out in the Flutterflow community as well. Will and some other Flutterflow people hang out in our community as well every now and then. So sometimes we can even answer the Flutterflow questions. And so if you want to build some cool mobile apps, Flutterflow plus Fastgen is a great option. Sure. And we hope you enjoyed it. We also did some live debugging, which is always the best thing about like the live streams, right? Because it shows that everyone is like sometimes like thinking about things differently, or then you need to like reassess on the way, but we were able to solve it, which is always a great sign. So thanks so much for joining. It was a pleasure and hope you have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks Fastgen team. Appreciate it.